The monarchy is a foundation built on tradition, but sometimes a single piece of paper can threaten to collapse the entire structure. Just months ago, the world was preoccupied with the king's health, yet behind the high stone walls of Kensington Palace, Prince William was facing an entirely different kind of crisis. It centered around a single, sealed document, a secret clause in Queen Elizabeth II's private will that had the power to make William one of the richest men in the world and put him into a bitter open war with his own father, King Charles III. This wasn't about jewels or dusty old titles. This was about a colossal sum, £300 million in highly valuable offshore holdings and properties. An asset Charles had always assumed was his to inherit. But the Queen had ensured otherwise, a final, strategic move to secure the future, even if it meant risking the present. The details of this clause were kept hidden from the public, and for a short, frantic period even from the king himself. When the truth was finally exposed within the royal household, the silent confrontation that followed was so explosive that senior courtiers worried the family might actually split, because this wasn't just a matter of money. It was about power, the Queen's final wishes, and the ultimate shocking battle for the crown's legacy. Stay with us until the very end, because the contents of this secret clause reveal the true, unspoken tension between William and his father, and the reason Charles views his own son as a quiet threat to his newly established reign. To truly grasp the gravity of this bombshell, we have to look back at the Queen's methodical and long-term planning during her final years. Elizabeth II was many things, but above all, she was a meticulous protector of the institution. She saw the future not just through her son, Charles, whose traditional views she sometimes found slow, but specifically through her grandson, William. Knowing that the monarchy desperately needed to modernize, something Charles has historically resisted, she made a bold, unprecedented move years before her passing. The asset in question was not some historic painting, but a private holding company that controlled a specific, valuable parcel of land and several extremely lucrative private investments managed discreetly through a series of trusts. For decades, it had been informally associated with the Crown estates, a sort of family fallback. But in private, it was Elizabeth's to distribute as she saw fit. She quietly, painstakingly ensured that the full legal control of this massive portfolio was ring-fenced, not for the reigning monarch, but for her direct heir to the throne, bypassing the current king entirely. This was her final, silent masterstroke of constitutional guidance. William himself was reportedly unaware of the transfer until his legal team found the sealed clause during the final accounting of the Queen's enormous personal wealth. He was genuinely shocked, even stunned. The Queen had positioned him with massive, independent financial leverage. She had given him a powerful, silent veto power over his own father's financial whims. This wasn't a bureaucratic mistake in a ledger. It was a deliberate, calculated play for the continuity and modernization of the future crown. The issue intensified dramatically when King Charles learned of the clause. At the heart of his consuming fury were two explosive elements: principle and financial necessity. On the principle side, Charles viewed the maneuver as a deep, public betrayal of royal hierarchy and protocol. The notion that his own mother would strip the reigning monarch of control over such a major asset and grant it directly to the Prince of Wales felt like a profound undermining of his authority, a quiet suggestion that he couldn't be trusted with the family's future. In private, he reportedly felt the action was a personal slight against his lifelong efforts to manage the crown's finances responsibly. But then there was the much more urgent material need. The monarchy, despite its staggering perceived wealth, relies heavily on King Charles's private Duchy of Lancaster estate to fund many of his official duties and personal expenditures. Insiders whisper that the expenses of the accession year, the coronation, the necessary staff increases, and certain private financial settlements had left the king feeling an uncomfortable pinch. He was relying heavily on consolidating the Queen's personal holdings to shore up his own resources for his new reign. This £300 million was not just a bonus, it was a crucial financial lifeline. When he was informed by his most trusted aides that his son now held the title to it, the king exploded. A furious exchange was reported to have taken place over the phone, short, sharp, and reportedly laced with accusation. The king is said to have demanded William immediately sign over the asset for the immediate financial stability of the institution. But William, though deeply conflicted about challenging his father, now understood the clear, higher purpose of his grandmother's profound legacy. What truly elevated this from a simple family disagreement to a royal crisis with lasting political fallout was the specific, controlling language buried deep within the clause. The document wasn't a simple gift. It was a condition, a test, a final command. The clause legally stipulated that William would retain full, non-negotiable control of the £300 million only if he agreed to and publicly committed to a series of radical, specified reforms to the monarchy within the first 3 years of his becoming Prince of Wales. These detailed reforms were designed to sharply streamline the working royal family, significantly reduce the number of publicly funded titles, and open the royal accounts to an unprecedented level of governmental scrutiny. In essence, the exact kind of transparency Charles has fiercely resisted his entire life. The Queen had engineered a perfect ultimatum. William could be enormously wealthy and secure the necessary future of the monarchy by embracing this painful change, or he could surrender the fortune and quietly fall in line with his father's deeply traditionalist agenda. This created an impossible bind for the heir. If William followed the Queen's final wish, he would be publicly acknowledging the need for reforms that effectively painted Charles's still fresh reign as outdated and too slow. If he didn't, he would be betraying his grandmother's most critical vision for the crown's long-term survival. The money was merely the sophisticated pressure point. The real treasure was the power to finally demand modernization. The tension reached a white-hot boiling point when William was given a quiet yet unmistakable ultimatum from the king's private secretary: formally waive his claim to the massive assets by the end of the current month or risk an unprecedented public schism that could destabilize the entire transition. William, caught agonizingly between his loyalty to his aging father and his fidelity to his grandmother's clear intent, began to wrestle with the impossible choice. Who did he turn to in this extreme isolation? Catherine, the Princess of Wales. She became William's sole trusted confidant during this period of intense turmoil. She reportedly urged him, with her usual calm resolve, to see the much larger political picture. "It's not about the cash, William," she is rumored to have stated simply. "It's about the leverage for the future." It's what she wanted. She intuitively understood that the £300 million wasn't the ultimate prize. It was the political ammunition. William and Catherine have always been seen as the most modern, relatable face of the monarchy, and this clause gave them a non-negotiable financially backed platform for sweeping change. If he signed it away, that leverage and the Queen's silent final blessing for reform would be permanently gone. The choice was brutally stark. Accept the DMN war with his father and protect his own hard-won vision for the throne, or retreat into passive, costly compliance. Sources close to the prince suggested he felt a new kind of heavy isolation. He wasn't just a son anymore. He was a king-in-waiting being forced to stand against the reigning sovereign on a matter of destiny. The confrontation over the Queen's secret clause laid bare the extremely uneasy balance of power and the deep ideological fractures in the new, slimmed-down monarchy. Ultimately, William made the defining choice of his life. He chose to protect the clause and the power for essential reform it represented. It was a decision that has caused an icy, almost constitutional distance to settle permanently between him and his father. Charles, unable to forcibly seize the asset without exposing a massive legal and devastating PR nightmare, was forced to accept a humiliating, private defeat. The £300 million dilemma has fundamentally reshaped the royal hierarchy. It permanently solidified William as a future king with his own independent base of power, and it confirmed his commitment to Elizabeth's long-term vision of a more transparent, streamlined monarchy. The asset remains under his control, sealed by his grandmother's firm, final decree. Charles's most loyal supporters now view William with a quiet but growing suspicion, seeing him as an heir with a dangerous, hidden agenda and the massive financial means to carry it out. The question, however, isn't really about the money or the land. It's about the ultimate price of a legacy. In her final move, the Queen bought her grandson a seat at the table with unassailable authority. Now, the world is waiting to see how William will finally use that leverage. Will he finally be the one to usher in the modern, open royal age his grandmother died trying to establish? Or will the crushing pressure from his father finally force him to fold?